Hello, listeners. Welcome back to the eLearning Champion podcast, where we explore key strategies, emerging trends, and triumphs shaping the world of digital learning. Are you seeking to innovate with technology while maintaining the human spark? In today's episode, we are speaking about how L&D teams can leverage technology without losing the human touch. Get ready to spark joy as I introduce our speaker for the day, Alicia Hughes. Hi there, Alicia.
Doing today?
Doing well. Looking forward to this interview.
I am excited as well. Happy to be here.
Alicia is a founder of Sparking Up Leadership, enabling leaders around the world to build culture, lead virtually, and spark joy. A lifelong educator, virtual leadership strategist, and keynote speaker, Alicia has over 14 years of experience leading South Carolina's largest public school. Her work centers on building culture, fostering authentic relationships, and leveraging tools, including AI, to empower teams to lead with clarity, confidence, and heart. We are thrilled to have you here, Alicia.
I am very excited to be here and I appreciate you having me.
Thank you so much. So, before we dive in, dear listeners, make sure you're a true e learning champion by hitting that follow button wherever you're listening in to us from. All right, let's get started. So, Alicia, could you share a bit about your journey into virtual leadership and e-learning? What would have sparked your passion?
So it was a happy accident, if I'm being honest. I was in the traditional school setting. I was a middle school teacher.
Wow.
And I left for a few years when I had my children. And after they got a little bit older, I wanted to go back into the classroom. And I literally stumbled upon a virtual high school position. And this was back
Wow.
in 2009, long
Wow.
before virtual education was a known thing. And so I started at a pretty small at the time virtual school here in the state of South Carolina as a teacher.
Wow.
And when I got there, I realized the power this place had to change lives. And so when you become passionate about something, you tend to find your way into leadership. And
Right.
so after about 10 months as a teacher, I made my way into leadership at the school and became an assistant principal, then the high school principal, and eventually the executive director leading
Wow.
the entire school. So it was an accident, but one that I quickly gravitated to and loved and became my passion.
Wow. That's super inspiring to hear. So, in your experience, what's the biggest challenge that L&D professionals face when trying to build relationships in virtual spaces?
The biggest challenge is not creating spaces that allow connections such as this. You know, we are literally
Right.
across the world from each other, right? And
Right.
yet we to talk and communicate and share smiles and joy. But if you don't create the opportunities, people are going to tend to stay hidden behind their screens or
Right.
not connect and not engage.
Right.
So requiring things like cameras on or creating the time to say we're just going to get together and we're going to talk and we're going to get to know each other, that is crucial to building that foundation to allow relationships to grow.
Wow. Very interesting. Spaces are very needed in today's hybrid world.
Correct. Yes. And if you don't create them, and require is a strong word, but encourage people to do things like
Encourage.
this, they tend to just stay off camera, stay behind that screen, only
Yes.
engage when they have to respond to an email or, complete an assignment if we're in the L&D space. And so again, just having these opportunities, that's the most important thing to do.
Absolutely. Yes. So, what are your go-to strategies for making virtual professional development feel more engaging and personal?
Go-to strategies would be sprinkle in the fun, right? Like I know that people are there to learn and people want the knowledge and the the engagement piece from that academic standpoint, right?
Right.
but putting in some of those, let's just get together as a cohort and let's just talk about our weekends, or
Right.
here's a fun little Padlet. Put here things that you like to do and use that to get to know each other. And so sprinkling them in, whether it's your courses or, if you have some live sessions, just making sure you're adding in that little touch of fun that can spark those connections and allow you to say, oh, I looked on that Padlet and I can see that he or she loves cats and I love cats. So maybe I'll
Wow.
feel
Yeah.
comfortable going to them if I need help or if I have a question. It just
Right.
allows those connections to grow because you have that commonality.
Right. It gives you a window to reach out
It
to.
does. And it doesn't have to be write a long essay about yourself and upload it. Let's all share it out loud. No, just
No.
those quick little sparks, those quick little pieces that
Right.
allow us into each other's lives.
Right. Interesting. So you just talked about a virtual sparkle. Could you explain more about what that means and how leaders can ignite it in an online learning type of setting?
Well, I think your viewers can see that I come with all the energy and all the passion and all the excitement and hand gestures and all the
Yes,
things.
absolutely.
And that is my personality, but I tend to turn it up just a bit when I'm on the camera because this space can be very cold, very
Right.
isolating, and very boring.
Right.
If you just come in and you give information and you read from a script or you're, just talking in a monotone voice, it doesn't excite. It doesn't draw people in, right? It
Right.
just, oh gosh, I'm gonna look at my second monitor and stop paying attention to what's happening right in front of me. Whereas if you come in with that excitement and that energy and that passion, it's kind of hard to ignore. So
Right.
I'm not saying you have to be this huge performer and that you have to come in all loud, but bringing yourself with that energy and that excitement, that is going to have people say, wait, I need to look at this screen and not this one over here, or
Right.
answer that email in the middle of this conversation. And so bringing your true self, but maybe turning it up just a notch is crucial to this space.
Right. Interesting. It makes people notice.
It does. It does. I've heard this now for 14 years that when I enter a virtual room, it's hard to, to not pay attention. Good
Right.
or bad, good or bad.
Right. Yes. Okay. So that's about a virtual sparkle. So, how can organizations cultivate a culture and connection with their digital learning programs?
It comes back to putting yourself into the mindset of how would I do this in a brick and mortar, in a face-to-face setting, right? Like what would
Right.
I do to build connections, to build relationships, to bring joy, to bring connection? And so you have to think of how can it apply to this space?
Right.
I always tell leaders it's important to connect in the one-on-one. It's important to build those relationships. So maybe it's a quick little email to someone with a, I noticed in our session that you seemed really engaged or confused or sad. Taking the time to connect outside of this space is
Right.
crucial. And then doing the things like giving those shout outs, right? If you were teaching in a
Yes.
brick and mortar classroom and you saw someone raise their hand and they said something that was just so inspiring, you would stop and you would say, oh my gosh, that's such a great point. Thank you for sharing.
Yes.
And so making sure you're doing the same thing virtually, whether it's in that chat pod or out loud, or if you're doing asynchronous learning, taking that time again to highlight it, share it out with your class or your group or your cohort, making sure you really recognize individually, both
Right.
on that grand scale of in the whole group, but also in those one-on-one interactions.
Right. Interesting. Okay. What role does feedback and communication play in a successful e learning design?
I have taken courses where I have felt like I am literally the only person in the course, knowing full well, if it's a large course, that there are many others out there around the world doing what I'm doing. And so
Right.
that becomes very lonely and very isolating. And also, it can be confusing. If I'm taking a course and I'm like, I don't quite understand that concept, or
Right.
I need more help. and I don't know who to turn to, that can be frustrating. And
Absolutely.
so making sure that you again have built in opportunities for your group, whether it's 5 people or 500 people, to connect and engage not only with you if you're the ones that has you are the leader of the course, but with each other, so that there isn't that feeling of isolation.
Right.
I have found those courses as well tend to be the ones I'm clicking on, and not as engaged, not really reading, not really digesting the information, applying the information. Rather, it becomes this checklist mentality. I've got to
Yes.
do this today. Let me get through it and get it completed so I can move on. Whereas the courses where I've taken where it's like, put something in a discussion, put something up into a place where you can discuss with others, or
Right.
um, here's or an opportunity to meet us all together on this day at this time, even if they're optional, at
Right.
least allowing that group to get to know there are others out there and they're not just working in isolation all alone in their home office.
Right. Okay. What tools or platforms have helped you enhance collaboration and connection in virtual training?
And I have seen so many over the years, of course, as things, and there are some that I might reference today that are no longer. I mean, I still think about Flip. I loved Flip, or
Yes.
Jamboards, all of those that have kind of gone out to pasture, if you will. Really, it's finding a tool that works for you and the group that you are engaging with, because there
Right.
are a plethora. There are Mural, there's Miro, Canva does a good job. So I can go on and on, but it's finding a tool that
True.
you are comfortable leading, so you are familiar with. There's nothing worse than being in a training where
Right.
the person's like, I'm not sure how to work this tool. So finding that tool that you are comfortable with, and then making sure when you push it out to your group, to cohort, your learners, that they also are comfortable with it.
They're
Because if they
comfortable.
get in and they're trying to engage and they're frustrated, like, I don't know how to add a comment to this, or I don't know how to even like that, they're going to quickly disengage. So
Right.
making sure again that it's a simple tool, it's not cumbersome, it's not confusing, you are comfortable with it, and the learners are comfortable with it is crucial. My personal favorite is Canva. I love me some
Right.
Canva, and it could be because of all the sparkle options that you can do and the colors and the fonts. But when I notice that my learners are having trouble just getting in, or they can't understand where to go, I
Right.
will quickly make sure I find something else that is a little bit less flashy, if you will, and easier to manipulate and for the learner to understand. And for those, I go to like a Padlet. That's pretty simple. Click, you can add your posts and then comment on others. And so those
Right.
types of things tend to be those good second choices if I need something quick that's easier for my learners to get into and access.
Right. Yes. So how do you see how do you see artificial intelligence influencing the future of e-learning, and how can we use it to enhance and not replace human relationships?
I believe with every fiber of my being, AI only helps these connections and these relationships. And I'm going to put on
Absolutely.
my school leader hat for just a second. When I was school leader, I spent a lot of time looking at data and looking at, reports, and then taking that data and turning it into documents, or turning it into presentations, or
Right.
turning it into e-learning. And I spent a ton of time on those things. And now there are so many tools that can analyze data for you.
Yeah.
Now, you always have to check, of course, and make
Yes.
sure, but it takes that time and really shrinks it down. And then you can take that data and put it into tools like Gamma, or even Canva's doing a great job now of taking that and creating presentations and
Yes.
reports. Again, you have to check. It's just a first draft, it's just a springboard, but it takes that time and shrinks it down, which gives you time back to then say, okay, now I want to meet with this learner that I can see is struggling, or this employee that's having a challenging time with this concept. And so you've
Right.
got that time back to build those relationships, as opposed to spending all your time in isolation reviewing data, creating reports, creating presentations. So I believe it is going to transform if we allow it to do so. I know there's still fear and there's still confusion and a
Yes.
lot of trepidation that AI is going to become, you and I are no longer going to be doing this because there'll be two bots doing it. But I cannot believe that that will happen. I only think of it as a tool that we will use to help maximize our time.
Right. Absolutely. So, could you share an example of a virtual PD or e-learning session you led that really stood out and why it really worked so well?
Oh my goodness. Well, there have been, again, I was in that world for 14 years and now have been out here on my own for about a year and a half. Let's think of one that, I gotta think now. Well, the most impactful ones were those that were starting out, right?
Okay.
Which sounds weird, where we were getting to know each other, where we had a problem
Hmm.
and we came together to try to come up with a solution, but we
Right.
were new to each other. It wasn't a group that had known each other or worked together.
Hmm.
And when I created those, I made sure to embed many opportunities, both directly and indirectly, for teams to get to know each other. And so you
Wow.
might start off with that first little icebreaker, what's your favorite movie, color,
Right.
car, whatever. But then you take that and use it to create groups. And so we would always do breakout sessions. And I would do the grouping of, okay, I'm going to put these two people together and these two people together and allow them that opportunity to talk, to
To talk.
brainstorm with those platforms that are mentioned as collaborated tools. So they could
Right.
have these documents that they could use both in the moment and then after the session had ended and refer back to, and also share out with the whole group. And so, again, building the opportunity to connect, but then giving the opportunity to actually do is crucial.
Yes.
The professional development or professional learning that I've led, where it is me talking with a
Right.
presentation of some sort on my screen, those are always disasters, always disasters. And so you can share information. Of course, you have to, but they should
Correct.
be very small pieces of information. And then you give it to your learners and say, let's manipulate this. Let's talk about this. Let's
Let's
discuss
talk about.
this and come up
Hmm.
with a solution. That is the most effective way to lead these sessions.
Wow. Interesting. Okay. So, what advice would you give to L&D leaders trying to elevate their virtual programs and create a lasting impact?
Well, number one would be, do not sit in front of your computer talking at your learners. That has never been found to be effective. But
Right.
again, to really focus on those on the other side of the screen. And it can be done asynchronously or synchronously, but making sure you
Yes.
are remembering who is on that other side, what they need, what questions they might have, and being available to support them throughout the whole entire journey. Simply pushing something out into the internet world and expecting those on the other side to receive it, to understand it, to digest it will never work. I have not seen it work in 14 years,
Right.
ever. So making sure, again, as you're pushing things out, that space is created for those to enter it and say, I don't understand. I need support. I have
Correct.
questions. Truly engage with that learning, making sure there's opportunity for engagement, both asynchronously and synchronously, and then follow up. That is my final piece of advice. Following up after the learning is over,
Right.
whether it's a week course, a 1 year course, whatever it might be, having that follow up at the end to say, how can I do this better? And do you still need more? Are you okay? Are you ready to take whatever knowledge you have gained and go apply it? Or are there some other things that you need to be successful? So, never pushing something out and just thinking it's going to go fly on its own, but making sure that you are there every step of the way and even afterwards to make sure that the learning has occurred and is being applied.
Wow. That's a very interesting piece of advice. Yes, so this actually was the last question, and that brings us to the end of another insightful episode of the eLearning Champion podcast. Thank you so much, Alicia, for the treasure trove of inputs you have shared today.
Thank you. This was great, and I hope it's helpful, and I appreciate you having me.
Yes, thank you so much. I hope, dear listeners, you're walking away with some fresh ideas and actionable steps to spark joy in your L&D activities. Becoming an e-learning champion is a journey of continuous learning and sharing. Please do share this episode with your fellow peers. Find us on your favorite social media platforms. We love hearing from you. Thank you so much for tuning in to the e-learning champion podcast. Until next time, take care and happy learning.